Welcome to Nerd Geek University's Day 1 of Dragons of Tarkir spoilers. Let's get started. Our first spoiler that we're going to talk about today is Profound Journey. It is a white card new to Dragons of Tarkir that brings back the rebound mechanic that some of the more experienced players might remember from the Rise of the Eldrazi set. For a hefty cost of 2 white and 5 colorless, you get to return any single permanent from your graveyard to the battlefield. According to the rebound mechanic, if you casted the card from your hand, it is exiled as it resolves, and on your next turn at the beginning of your upkeep, you may play this card again from exile for free at the beginning of your upkeep. While the mana cost is pretty hefty, it doesn't need to be said that returning any permanent from the battlefield from the graveyard for even 7 mana is pretty good, not to mention you get to do it again on your next turn for free. In Limited, Profound Journey brings back bombs or other cards that were removed earlier in the game to help finish off your opponent and get the last few needed points of damage in. In Standard, you can play this with Siege Rhino and get some extra drain out of it, and it even synergizes with the new exploit mechanic. In Modern, it doesn't need to be said that this card just gets even better in the late game. Sandcrafter Mage is a card that brings back the bolster mechanic we saw in Fate Reforged and costs 1 white and 2 colors to play for either a 2/2 body or a 3/3 if he's your only creature in play. Stratus Dancer is a new card in Dragons of Tarkir that also introduces the new Megamorph mechanic. At his regular cost, he is a 1 blue and 1 colorless 2/1 flyer. Like all morph-themed creatures, you can also choose to cast him face down as a 2/2 creature and flip him for his morph cost, or in this case, his Megamorph cost. The new Megamorph mechanic acts exactly like the old Morph mechanic, but when the creature is flipped over, in addition to any flip effects it may have, it also gains a +1/+1 counter. That's really the only difference. In Stratus Dancer's case, his Megamorph cost is the same as his regular casting cost, but when he is turned face up, you get to counter any instant or sorcery spell. Being a Megamorph creature, he also gains a +1/+1 counter, making him a respectable 3/2 flyer for either decent attacking or blocking. In Limited, he can also make a very good card, being able to surprise counter any sort of new instants or sorceries that are sure to come out later in the set. There's always instants and sorceries to counter. For this same reason, he also makes a decent card in Standard. In Modern, however, I don't expect him to see any play, as there are better ways to counter an opponent's incoming spell, Mana Leak being a good example. However, the benefit of being able to counter a spell and getting a decent creature at the same time is not bad. Agitai Summons is another card that features the return of the rebound mechanic from the Rise of the Eldrazi set. For 2 blue and 3 colorless, you get a 2/2 monk creature with flying, and the rebound mechanic allows you to play it again next turn for free. In Limited, its playability is good, giving you 2 flyers to block whatever your opponent may have in the air. Sidisi Undead Vizier is an interesting new card, seeing as how in the Khans of Tarkir set, Sidisi was not a zombie, and was the Khan of the Sultai, and was also multicolored. Now, in the Dragons of Tarkir set, she is a servant to Dragonlord Salgar, and gained very interesting new power in the new exploit mechanic. She costs 2 black and 3 colorless, a cost that makes it easier to play her in multiple decks. She has a 4/6 body with Death Touch, which will make it easier to get past Siege Rhino, Butcher the Horde, and of course the new dragons in the set. And whenever she exploits a creature, you get to search your library for any card, add it to your hand, and then shuffle your library. In Limited, Sidisi is pretty good, as being able to tutor up your biggest bomb is definitely not an effect you should pass over in Limited. She could see some slight standard play, as her mana cost makes it easier to play her in a variety of decks, and when you combo her with Active Treason to sack an opponent's creature to her exploit mechanic, it makes your opponent pretty sad. You could also use her in some sort of Mardu token strategy that involves use of Goblin Rabblemaster and Hordling Outburst. Sidisi could also see some play in Modern, as being able to bring up any card to your hand for converted mana cost 5 is definitely not an effect to sneeze at. She could also see play if you find a way to blink her and yet still continuously activate her exploit. Sidisi could also see play in EDH, as any deck that runs black in the format could use some extra tutors. Salgar Butcher is another card that includes the new exploit mechanic. He costs 1 black and 4 colorless. Whenever he exploits a creature, target creature gets -3/-3 until end of turn. This will see play in Limited to help clear your opponent's side of the field of smaller and much more annoying creatures like weaker blockers. Dragon Tempest is also a new card unique to Dragons of Tarkir that is clearly meant to be played with dragons. For 1 red and 1 colorless, you get an enchantment that gives all your flyers haste when they enter the battlefield until end of turn. It also includes another ability that states whenever a dragon enters the battlefield under your control, it deals X damage to target creature player, where X is the number of dragons you control. So in order to get benefit from both effects, you need to be playing a decent number of dragons, which decreases its playability significantly in many formats. In Limited, we haven't seen any efficient combos with this yet, but the card could get significantly better as the spoilers progress. So far, the only use I've found for Dragon Tempest in Standard is giving creatures like Wingmate Rock and Lotus Pathogen haste, being able to fly in for damage a turn early. In Commander, however, Dragon Tempest would work very well in a dragon-themed deck, being able to help get in major damage a little faster with Dragon Broodmother, as well as some play with Utvara Hellkite. Sprinting Warbrute is another card that brings back an old mechanic from Fate Reforged in the form of the Dash mechanic. He costs 1 red and 4 colorless for a 5/4 that must attack each turn, or you can pay his dash cost, which is 1 red and 3 colorless. Dragonlord Salgar is an Elder Dragon. While there have been 5 other creatures made with the subtype of Elder Dragon, one of them was Nicol Bolas, who we did just see in the Fate Reforged storyline right after we went back in time. Just something to point out, it might not mean anything as of right now. Dragonlord Salgar is 4 colorless, 1 blue, and 1 black for a 3/5 body with Death Touch and Flying. His ability, however, is what commands him respect. When he enters the battlefield, you get to gain control of another target creature or planeswalker for as long as you control him. In Limited, Salgar is pretty good, as you can take control of your opponent's big bomb card and use it against them. In Standard, you could use Salgar for the same purpose, being able to take their biggest creature from them and turn it against them. However, due to his high mana cost and his legendary status, you'd really only want to use 2 of him in any one given deck. In Modern, he could see some play, as being able just to take over someone's strongest board threat is pretty decent, as at turn 6, you'll probably see quite a few cards to take over. In Commander, however, is where I see this Dragonlord can see quite a bit of play. Using him as your commander is just dirty, as many other commander decks revolve around the idea of building around the commander to get as much out of their effect as possible, and by stealing your opponent's commander will probably slow them down quite a bit until Salgar is either destroyed or removed. It is also important to note that you can have this version of Salgar in his Dragonlord form and his younger self in Fate Reforged in the form of Salgar the Drifting Death out at the same time, as they are different legendary creatures. Well, that's it for spoilers for today. What do you guys think of Dragons of Tarkir spoilers so far? Got any thoughts or speculations for future spoilers? Leave them in the comment section below. Don't forget to subscribe, and we will see you tomorrow for more spoilers.